Mom trusts daycare with 6-month-old, realizes she's made a huge mistake. Today's story will be focusing on an unfortunate event, a horrifying experience that everyone should be aware of before blindly trusting a stranger to take care of their small child. Anari Armand has been a lady struck by wheels of events. She dropped out of high school and left home at an early age to pursue her career as an artist. She is one of those people who knew exactly what she wanted and many times knew how to get it. She started working very early in many galleries, supporting many new artists. Eventually, they helped her back by giving her ateliers where she could develop her own art, and she was invited to many gatherings where she always found new opportunities for developing her artistic thought and exhibiting her work. When she was 21, her works of art were already curated for several exhibitions around New York, and her career was growing steeply. She was very focused on her work, and the development of her artistic skills would always represent a #1 priority. Since she had left home and dropped out of high school, she was in no contact with her family anymore. She was not rich, but she had a dream. All of that was valid until she fell in love. At one of her exhibitions, she was curiously distracted by a mysterious man. His coat, his looks, his gestures, everything impressed the young artist, and she couldn't resist and went talking to him. This man resembled everything she ever wanted from a partner. He was an artist himself, and they soon got married. This marriage was a backbone for both of them because they could share a big space for both of them to work. They always had someone to share their new ideas, and the love they carried for each other was bigger than life. One day, Anari got pregnant by accident. She was happy to know that the lover of her life would support her and that this child was going to be born in a safe place. As it turns out, the day Zuri Rose Kamara was born, her husband had left her. He was not aware of the implications until he saw his little daughter. He couldn't stand it, so he showed his weak side. Anari was, of course, emotionally unstable, but with the help of plenty of friends and art, she managed her way better than many people could. She stayed at home for some time to feed the baby and understand what kind of mother she's about to become. She's extremely intelligent and got accustomed pretty fast with her new way of life and provided useful resources for her and her little daughter. However, she was slowly becoming willing and prepared to pursue her career further, and she knew it would be impossible for her to take care of the child alone. She needed help, and since she had no family, she had to manage her way alone. When faced with the bitter reality, Anari decided that she cannot allow herself to become a stay-at-home mom. She knew that if she were to leave her artistic endeavors behind, it would be nearly impossible to get back on track. On the other side, so her plan was to send her little baby daughter to the JNA nursery institution, providing help with the 1-year-old baby. Anari became, in the meantime, a very sensitive person, sensing the danger long before it appeared, so she was extremely picky when it came to choosing a day home for her daughter. J&A Nursery seemed to be a good place. The state-of-the-art technology provided all the needed monitoring system for anticipating the needs of the babies. The personnel was very well trained and loving, and this institution was not far from her home. Additionally, one of Anar's best friends, Marcella, found herself in a similar situation, and they both decided that this home would be the best for their kids. With all that being said, Anari still did not trust this facility completely, so on the first day she gave Zuri away, she and Marcella also hired a private detective to keep an eye on what was going on around the building. Mr. Stevenson, the detective, was of course not allowed to get inside of the building, nor let anyone recognize, so he was in disguise. His main job was to know who comes in and out and to report whether any peculiarities might occur. Some days passed and all seemed in place, until they were not in place anymore. Mr. Anderson called Anari one day and told her that one of the nurses ran out of the facility and went inside a nearby posh house, stayed in there for about half an hour, and went back into the facility. All that while holding one of the babies. He was unable to tell whether that baby was Marcella's or Anari's daughter, and the face of the nurse was not to be clearly shown since a scarf was covering most of her face. However, the succinct depiction of the face was very well fitting the appearance of Areli Stark, the nurse responsible for Anari's daughter, Zuri. Both Anari and Marcella turned to stone when hearing these words, each thinking that it could have been one of their babies. Impulsively, they both decided to take their children from there, but after reconsidering, they made the decision to ask some questions first. As they talked to the manager, they asked whether nurses ever go out with the children during the day. They knew that going out for air would be a cheap excuse since the home provides a huge indoor garden. The manager only told them that some nurses have had their babies in there themselves, so maybe if one of them feels like taking a walk with their child, they're only free to do so. It would also be against our principles to move your children without your consent. The only scenario where we would for sure have to take the baby somewhere would be at the hospital in case of an extreme health-related situation. But even in that case, we would definitely call you first so that you tell us what to do about that. Since neither Anari nor Marcella had any other feasible options for their kids, they both decided to trust these words. In the upcoming days, the detective wouldn't cease to worry the two friends due to unnatural events happening. The nurse going in and out with the baby and walking inside of the mysterious house would occur daily at least once. Another peculiarity that Mr. Stevenston observed was that every 2 to 3 days, some men would come around the building and just stare at it for some minutes. They would then carry on walking. None of them ever set foot inside. From the detective's skills of recognizing faces, he concluded that it was only this one nurse who would always take out babies, and the staring man would always be the same 3 men who never came together but one by one. The feeling of the two mothers were far from peaceful due to the information the detective was telling them, but on the other hand, every time they would go to the institution to either leave or pick their babies up, the situation seemed to be in place. This made the situation a little bit less stressful, but not perfect. After a couple of weeks, Anari received a text from Areli, the nurse in charge of Zuri. "Hey Anari, call me on your lunch break, please." Not a surprise that Anari had called her right after reading the message. Areli was crying and shouting and sobbing at the same time. Anari could not decipher one word from her. Areli took a goof mouth of air and told Anari in one exhale, "Your baby Zuri got bitten up. This little 12-year-old boy, you've seen him around. I was just 3 times he bit her. I was at the bathroom, and when I came back, she started crying again." Anari froze for a second. "Are you out of your mind? A baby biting another baby? Call the ambulance. Do something." Areli hung up. Anari rushed to the nearest hospital to the facility to check in whether someone might have brought the child to the emergency room. She found nothing, so she rushed to the nursing home. She entered by smashing the door against the wall, sobbing, shouting. She was completely desperate and confused. There was no one at the reception, so she ran through the whole building until she had finally found her little daughter. She almost fainted. Zuri's skin was covered in bruises, swelling, and scratches. Her legs, her arms, her head even. Anari was terrified. Areli tried to explain to her just how she fell with Zuri on the stairs while getting Neosporin. "What do you say?" On the phone it was, "What have you done to my child?" "I'm so sorry, madam. I promise it won't happen again." No, you liar are not getting away with this. You're going to jail." Anari took her baby right away and went to the St. Barnabas Hospital. Fortunately, she was told by the doctors that even if the skin injuries are prominent since the baby's body is very fragile, the damage itself can be easily treated. The baby was also found with a mild concussion, but the CT scans on her head showed no internal bleeding and the X-ray on the baby's legs depicted no fracture on the bones. The hospital assured Anari that it'd be better if the little child spent the night in the hospital, so that in case of any kind of emergency, the 24-hour personnel could take care of the issue immediately. It was hard for Anari to be again away from her baby, but she understood that the hospital would provide better care than she ever could. She used the time smartly to investigate the situation. She had phone calls with Marcella and Mr. Stevenson, and they all decided to return to J&A Nursery and settle this once and for all. When they arrived, they immediately asked to speak to Areli. They waited for a long time to find out that she was nowhere to be found. She did not pick up the phone. She was gone. Both mothers were on the verge of desperation and anger. Together with the detective, they had decided not to call the police and try and solve the puzzle themselves. They explained everything to the manager, and together with her, they all went towards the house where Areli would always take the children. They waited in front of the house for several hours until they were shown inside. It was pretty late in the night when the door was opened by a pale, slender man. The visitors got wary while waiting, but once the door had opened, they recovered their energy pretty rapidly, knowing that this case might get solved soon. The man allowed them to come inside. At the beginning, he appeared as if he would not tell them anything, but the begging of the mothers made his heart sweet, so he invited them further into the house to show his secrets. I understand your situation, ma'am. Seeing your baby in such a devoured state must only be dreary. I will tell you the truth. I swear. What you will hear won't make much sense at the beginning, but you have to trust me. You came here for information, so all you can do is trust me now. I must ask you to sign this act of discretion first. You are allowed to tell further about this house and what we do, but if we ever find out you spread the word about how our rituals work— Rituals? Marcella shouted. Please sign the papers and I will tell you everything. I only do it out of common decency because I feel for you. I had a child once too, and I would feel tormented myself if I ever had to go through this. I'm here to help. The slender man told them about their sect. They use babies for their spiritual rituals. The way it works, only the 4 visitors were able to see. However, for these rituals to be completed, they needed insignificant amounts of babies' bodies, so they're darting off little pieces of skin from Inari's daughter. As extreme as it sounds, the slender man had sworn them they had never injured any baby. The darted skin was so little that one wouldn't even notice. It had also mentioned that they were paying Aurelie good money for this deal, but the whole time they had thought that Aurelie was bringing her own children. They had no idea how many people were involved. The whole experience in the house felt like a dream for all the visitors, and shortly after, they all found themselves in the situation of deciding what to do next. There were so many questions. How can they involve the police without telling them about the rituals? Was the slender man telling the truth? Where was Aurelie? Neither Aurelie nor Marcella could sleep that night, thinking about the chaos going on in the facility. They were constantly thinking how many other babies and parents would suffer if this very institution carries on surviving. So they came to the conclusion to call the police and inform them of what was happening. And as long as we never reveal any information about the rituals, the slender man supports our decision, right? We will not get them in much trouble with this. Regardless of the $800 we were paying monthly in order for our babies to be taken care of, imagine how many other people could be blinded like we were and lured into trusting these people. We must take an action and try to close this damn place down, Inari told Marcella. Yep, you're right. The police wouldn't care how the ritual works as long as the babies were not injured because of that. We still need to find out why Zuri was full of bruises. The police investigations started the same day. The investigators from Newark Police Department Prosecutor's Office, Special Victims Unit, and Child Protective Services only needed 2 days to shed light on what was going on inside of the facility. They found out how poorly the facility was actually equipped. According to CBS New York, the emergency exits just did not exist. There were no fire extinguishers. The disinfectants were mixed up with water. There was rat poison in the kitchen, and many walls were moldy. The police interrogated another nurse whose shifts were in the same days with those of Aurelie's. She stated that, "I never saw Aurelie being gentle with the gentle body of any baby. Immediately after they would lay hand on a child, bruises and scars would start appearing. This was always floppy about the correct nutrition for the babies. She was very violent and impulsive. I never really understood why she was working there, since she obviously had no desire to change her way to suit this kind of job. I saw her with Inari's child. She was horrible." They tried tracking Lisa, the owner of the place. It turns out she had no license to run such a place, and therefore her employees were poorly trained, since many of them presented falsified attestations of child training. She violated many health codes, and that only for some money. Some employees were clean, and it was concluded that they had no idea about how the institution really worked. The rest of them, together with Lisa, ended up in jail, and the home was shut down. NJ.com reported about this case and describes the people working there together with their boss and activity as nuisances, failure to obtain a certificate of occupancy, failure to obtain a license, and failure to provide adequate doors for exit. After this whole turmoil, the young mother still blames herself for what had been going on. I felt so weak knowing that my little princess was in there, and there was nothing I could have control over her and protect her. The time I spent before getting there, after that Aurelie called me, was the most devastating experience I ever had to go through. No one deserves that. Little by little, the feeling of remorse eventually went away when she understood how much she helped other people who may have been in that situation after her. The fact that she took action and did not let herself be psychologically destroyed made her not only very proud, but also give her strength. Bad people are going around the world, and they must be stopped. These cases are of high importance for future generations. It is not known precisely how such trauma affects the baby and its development. One thing for sure, cruelty must stop immediately. Please share this story and spread the rumor. People need to know about the dark sides of the world too, and also learn how to protect and anticipate danger.